Hi everyone, it's Grant Abbott speaking. I'm here with Michael Jeffries and also Tony Anors. How are you going, guys?
Yeah.
Hi, Grant.
Hi, Grant.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah,
Morning, everyone.
we just came off a 4-hour session yesterday, which is now sitting up on the Strategy Centre. I'll show it to you once we bounce out of here and start going into the LightYear Docs suite. So that's now compiled with a lot of resources there for you. Honestly, it's probably, if you read all the resources, the cases, listen to it again, it's a good, good solid 8-hour session, but you get so far up the tree, which is fantastic in this exciting new succession, asset protection, estate planning area. And of course, those of you who are looking at being part of the working group for the Succession, Asset Protection, Estate Planning Association, Advisor Association, please contact Michael, and that's Michael at lightyeardocs.com.au to be part of that working party. We'll be getting together in November. In addition, Tony and I will be doing a 3-hour Estate Planning 101, which is a deep dive into a whole range of different sort of trusts that can appear on death, capital protected trusts, special disability trusts for children, SMSF death benefits trusts. So although we talk about estate planning 101, it's really for the advanced, sort of, if you're an accountant or financial planner, you need to know this stuff anyway, because if you have to administer it, you want to know the tax rates. I'm going to show which ones attract the accepted person rule, which means that children are taxed at adult rates and which ones don't. So that's coming up in November, just slotting in a date, but it'll be sometime in the second week of November. So Tony's done a lot of work on that. Well done, Tony. So do you want to give it a bit of a preamp before I jump into these these leases?
So what will happen is basically what we're going to do is I've diagrammed out how we're going to look at basically the administration of estates is pretty much there, and also following that, the real question is, at the end of the day, what happens upon death? So what happens when a person dies, how you administer the estate, how you collect those assets, how you extinguish liability at the end of the day, which is important. And then the flow-on effect of that is basically how do we set up the relevant trusts and what the tax implications are for each one of them, basically. So that's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, look, I've had a look at the infographic that Tony's done on what to do. Again, it's like his roadmap. He likes his old roadmaps. He's just trying to desperately get out of Melbourne. Mate, you can't put a roadmap and an infographic and expect to get out of Melbourne lockdown yet.
Well, we're on the road. We're on the road to recovery.
Yes, exactly. So I've had a look at the roadmap for administering estate, and I must admit I will be using it myself for my father's late passing, and particularly one of the issues that we looked at yesterday is it's absolutely crucial when you come around for this, and I can't say this more emphatically, but on the death of a client, whether they're in an SMSF and we're using an SMSF death benefits trust, or there's pensions, etc., and their estate, that you be appointed as the advisor to the estate, because essentially there's some great fees there. And if you have a look at how long an administration of estate can take, which are available, you can essentially do, and there's some really good fees. In fact, I've seen lawyers charge up to $45,000 for administration fees. So it's absolutely crucial. Anyway, let's bounce out of there and just have a look at the LightYear Docs suite. Many of you probably already used our commercial lease agreement, which I feel is one of the strongest in the land. We've made a number of changes to it. We operate, as I've said before, on the process of Kaizen, which is James Edward Deeming, and also the Japanese engineering and manufacturing principle, which is the process of continuous improvement. We're very lucky with the system that we use, and the one that Michael is now obviously looking at for our LightYear Docs 2, which will be out in early April. And essentially for that, what we ensure is that If you've made changes or you come back with ideas or suggestions, or you've had a look at the document, there's a couple of little tweaks, we're happy to change it on the spot. In fact, we can make changes ridiculously fast if they're just technical or grammatical or whatever changes. If there's changes to the interview fields, then we have to pass it through Abbott Mourly to make sure that there is absolutely no drafting issues there, so that you'd be potentially caught up in legal services. So we're really fine on that one. But the commercial lease has gone through a few iterations. I won't go into it now, but there's a video up on the Strategy Centre on that one. The rental reduction agreement, we were first legal firm / document firm coming out with a rental reduction agreement. Unfortunately, we probably don't do really well on the PR side of things, and that we were miles in front. And I just saw that, who did I see? It was another legal firm came out probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Mind you, we had this months and months ago, coming out and saying they've finally got their rental reduction agreement in place, which is probably superfluous given the fact that, well, I mean, if you have a look at the government's compact, and we were over that right from the start, it applies to the end of JobKeeper. So that's obviously the 31st of March. So in relation to that one, a couple of important things. Have a look at our rental reduction agreement, but it needs to be overlaid over the top of an existing commercial lease agreement. So you don't want to go and break the lease agreement and reset it. You can if there's negotiations between the parties, but it's best just to overlay this. So that rental reduction agreement applies over an existing agreement, and it's for third parties as well as obviously SMSFs. Now, when we go down to SMSFs, we're down a little further down the rabbit hole there, because we've got to make sure there's compliance. Michael and I interviewed Stephen Keane, who's the Assistant Commissioner of Taxation, Self-Managed Superannuation Funds, for our strategy summit, which was in July. I can't believe that seems so long ago.
Crazy, isn't it?
Isn't it? It just seems so long ago. This year just dragging on, but it seems so long, but it's so short ago. And in that one, we raised the issue about the rental reduction and obviously all the compliance issues that the Commissioner was going to overlook in terms of gnarly. Particularly if you're obviously reducing your rental, that's the non-arm's length expenses section. And as a consequence of that, he said no at that time that effectively you needed to ensure that you had a legally binding agreement. Otherwise, it's not going to pass gnarly, which would be dangerous, because then it means that any subsequent income coming from that commercial lease and also the sale of the property, the capital gain, all of it would be taxed at 47%. And it's quite amazing, because I have seen a few of our people jump on our support centre, and I'm not sure whether they know that we've got a rental reduction, but saying, is a minute okay? And a minute is not okay. It's impossible to do a minute, because it has to be a legally binding contractual agreement between the lessor and the lessee. You can't just simply have the lessor, being the self-managed super fund, doing a minute saying, well, we're going to drop the rent, because that's not legally binding on anyone. It's not even binding on the trustee for that matter. So you've just really got to make sure that if you've got any commercial leases for any of your clients, that you go in and have a look at that rental reduction agreement. Again, look, our document, in fact, I think our documents are way too cheap. They're only $99. So have a look at that one, and then you can take it from there. So what I'm going to do now is, we've got a new farm lease that's up and around. So I'm just going to bounce out of here, and we'll have a look at the actual agreement itself. So this should be up on, hopefully it's up on LightYear. Actually, while I'm here, you'll go into, let's have a look at the LightYear Docs Support Centre. One of the ones here we talked about yesterday about all our done for you emails there. We can just copy and paste, or look at the copy, paste it into an email or an email program, send it off to the client, and attach here, obviously, a data capture as well. So we're moving more towards this rather than some of our letters here. So you're going to start to see this build up quite significantly. The other one yesterday, well, I've put in a new section in our webinar videos. We've got our I Love SMSF CPD, a platform. Next week, I'm going to, we'll expand this and do a broader section of that. but I've got a few ideas around that. I'm going to put a lot of my resources up here as well. So here we've got our webinar videos, and these are the sessions from yesterday. So the one there, for example, where the moat, and as I said there, Michael, we've got Michael involved there talking about clients in the event of a liquidation, how to get them back from the jaws of death. You can see there's a lot of material here. We've got the protector download, the protector sample. If I take you back to the first one, which is pretty instructive, the same thing, it was the first hour. Rather than having a 4 hour, I've put it into bite-sized pieces. But you can see here, although we were really focusing on the high level in terms of how to build a business, particularly Tim's session, how to actually do the documentation, behind all that, there's a lot of cases. So you can see that EPO and will data capture from Max Smith, Miller's case, which is the Western Australian case, with the Justice Courtois talked about savaging the legal estate, where the fees for the lawyers was almost as much as the estate itself, and Kelly versus DeLucci, which is a pretty long case, but in the guts of it, it's potentially only in New South Wales. Again, only in New South Wales. The concept of a notional estate allows the New South Wales Supreme Court to dip into potentially self-managed super funds, which I believe is completely unconstitutional, and the dopey lawyers in that case didn't argue that. But anyway, and then there's the slides of the day as well, so have a look at those. So I'm going to just jump into LightYear Docs. I haven't done anything around this one. I've got a few changes already to go into the rural lease. I've made a couple of small changes. I'll show you around them. Obviously, they're going to be business and commercial leases. And you can see there we've got a farm lease agreement. Now, thank you for one of our team for providing this to us. And again, if you've got any particular documents you'd like to share and care with us, please send them through, and obviously subject to copyright, etc. We more than happily put it up on the system. And this was one that was being local solicitor was charging $2,500 for. So it's a pretty solid and a very big document. So let's just go through. I'm going to put it the Smith Farm Lease there. Use Abbott Mourly logo. If you haven't got your logos yet, make sure that you just send it off to support@lightyeardocs.com.au. So what we're going to do now is we just put in the certificate of title. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So you're going to find this off the land registry. So we just put that in there, and let's just go. That's a pretty weird one, but a lot of these, particularly naming rights, it's Palkagi. So a lot of these naming rights, etc., they're weird in all of the various states. So before you go, obviously, down this, you want to do an inspection of the land titles register, so you get these details correct. I have put in place, which you'll see this afternoon, there'll actually be the name of the farm, because I know a lot of farmers like to name the farm. My ex-father-in-law, who's since passed, he had a farm in Dubbo, which he was called Terramungamine, but then that would have been described around this, because you can't just put it on a road. So the estate and interest, I'll blow that out. So there's two, and this will be explanatory when you go in. It will have a whole lot more explanatory notes this afternoon. But fee simple is essentially where the property is owned outright. Otherwise, you'll find a lot of farms are operating on Commonwealth leases. And of course, then it'll be leasehold property. So you're either going to have fee simple or leasehold. The rent amount is generally rent per annum. So we just put that number in there. And again, as I said, that explanation will come through. Now, outgoings, when we have a look at it, and I'll end up showing you, in fact, what I'll do is I've got the farm lease here that I produced out of this system, but I'll show you where it is. So this is the farm lease itself, and I'll go through and make changes. But I just wanted to show you, so the tenant itself is up for obviously outgoings. So you can see the farm lease, if it's named, so it could be Terramungamine farm lease. So we've got the name of the farm, Terramungamine, land description, blah, 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 who the lessor or lessee is, and I'll go through that a little bit later on. Rent manner of payment, rent is $10,000 per annum, so on and so forth. And then obviously this is all going to be fixed up. But you can see down here the outgoings. So here is 100%. So outgoings are essentially those amounts that the tenant will pay. So that includes council rate, water and sewer rates, land tax, and emergency services levy. So remember, this is rural land we're looking at, but it's not commercial, and it's also not retail land as well. So when we go in there, we just punch it in, and we've worked. Oh, I've got the wrong one. So that's the general one. So we'll just go 100% if we want. And then what we've got there is, let's probably start here and work out the lease. So we're entering the lease today, and then it's a 5-year lease. So I'm going to end it. It's going to finish on the 14th of the 10th, 2025. Now that's a 5-year lease. Now, particularly if they're related parties, you want to start to make sure that you've got rights to renew. So the way the lease works is at the end of the lease, you've then got our commercial lease is a little bit more sophisticated because it then has options of rights to renew. And that's been mainly done more from a commercial perspective. So you can use it commercially. Usually when it comes around to farm leases, it's more that the farmer's in a discretionary trust, or more importantly in a self-managed super fund, and it's going to go back to a related party. So we probably want to put in as many rights to renew as we can. So if I put in 5 years, then effectively we've got a 30-year lease, if that makes sense. So it's 5 years there, and then 5 lots of 5-year options as well. Put the legislation I think I've got here in South Australia. Now we go down to the lessor. So the lessor is the, oh, sorry, what did I miss out? Okay, put a number. So again, even shows me what to do. So if we then go down to the next one, we're going to have the lessor, which is the party owning it. So we'll put the Smith Family Super Fund. We then go down and look at the trustee, which isn't that sophisticated, SMSF, nominees. Pty Limited, put in the ACN, street line address. So we've got 5 Spencer Street, Port Augusta, South Australia, and I'm not sure what the postcode is, so I'll just I'll go 5040, who knows. And then I'll just go sole director. We've got John Smith there, so that's pretty easy. So this is a related party one. So it's a lease from the self-managed super fund to the lessee, which let's put in place here, the Smith Family Trust. And we'll make that a company. So when we go down here, we'll have Smith Family. Obviously, it has to be a different company to our SMSF. Put in the ACN. And again, we can be in a position here. So 5 Spencer Street. That's right, Spencer, just getting a bit carried away here, getting too excited. Port Augusta, I remember doing a talk in Port Augusta once. It's quite a nice, interesting town. 5040, and that's essentially it. So then I obviously just finish it, and up will come the document there for us. So Vivian Edmonds, that's a good question. Does the lease need to be registered if it's for more than 3 years? I'm pretty sure it does have to be. It has to put on the registration. It's going to depend on which state you are in. Generally, what I do the old softy way of doing it, and I'll come down. So, I'll have rural lease registration South Australia, and that usually takes me to the government site. So you'll see here pastoral leases. So if we go down there, if it ever comes up, So pastoral leases, Government of South Australia. Pastoral lease allows the occupation and use of Crown land, which is simply the same thing. Okay, now there's a rent rebate, pastoral board, pastoral lease, pastoral travelling across the pastoral. Okay, it doesn't have any about the registration in there. Okay, Land Services South Australia. Okay, so rural lease. So rural lease registration. We'll see what comes up for that one. Oops. So let's have a look quickly. Right back, good site. It's probably, I'm not sure whether it's lease registration. Let's see what pops up. Okay, document lodgement fees, land description, rights of broker clause with a lease. Okay, so Vivian, thanks for that. I'll probably need to do a little bit more, have a little bit more of a guide on that. If there's anyone in South Australia or any of your states that are online at the moment, please let me know. Just chuck it in the Q&A or the chat box so we know whether it needs to be registered. But my feeling is that because of the size of the lease of 5 years, particularly if it's got all those options, that we would need to register. It has quite a significant impact, obviously, on it's like a mortgagor almost. It has quite a significant impact on the property. But anyway, let's get back into it. So, so we've got okay, we've got the document there. Download the document. That pops up there. But really good question for that one. In fact, Tony, I might get you to take that on board and look at it from an Abbott Mourly perspective. So we've got SMSF nominees. So that's the lessor. So that's the super fund that owns it. And then there's a family trust. And again, you need, if you're doing a lease of a farm back to a self-managed super fund, which is a great strategy. And the reason it's a great strategy is that the farm sits inside the self-managed super fund. Next generation runs it through the family trust. They pay rent to mum and dad, which then goes into the superannuation fund. Hopefully, there's a large percentage of it is in the pension side, so it's tax-free to mum and dad. If you wanted to have a little line further, you can then get mum and dad who are in their pension phase still living on the property. There'll have to be a set-off, obviously, for the rental fees there, which can be set off against their pension. They can then take that money down and pay for their grandkids' school fees to then make the grandkids dependents, etc. So it's an awesome strategy, but it's also a strong asset protection strategy and also a family provision strategy. I've seen 2 instances in the past where a farm was gifted over, which is pretty typical of those days, is where the parents gifted over to the landowning child, or sorry, the business child, whoever's operating in the business. And in one instance, the son died, and effectively, I don't know why they did it, but the farm was in joint names, so it went to the spouse or the daughter-in-law, and then she promptly kicked mum and dad off the property. Another one was not so dramatic, but it was because, again, it was in the son's name. They didn't think about asset protection. The daughter-in-law upped and left, and they had to sell the farm in order to pay for the settlement proceeds or the family settlement proceeds. So you've just got to be extremely careful around that one. And again, that's why I believe self-managed super funds and farms, we've got a number of our users who have huge amounts of farms in there. So if you're in the regional areas, you haven't been doing that, then make sure that you either let us know, or if you need someone to help you along that way. All of our advisors are sharers and carers, so we're basically in that. So this is the farm lease, land description, fee simple. It's all the stuff we just had a look before. Commencing on the 15th of October, finishing in 2025 with Together with 5 rights, it should be rights, I've made that change, of renewal pursuant to clause 2022. You got the rent per annum. Then we go down into the definitions, which we had a look at. And again, it's a good, strong lease. In fact, as I said, generally lawyers will charge $2,500 for this. So there's a grant of the lease and term. And remember, this is for 30 years, payment of rent, payment of outgoings. But there's a lot of stuff down the back end. And if you'd like it, I'll put this up, this lease agreement up on the site in our webinar videos as well. So you can have a look, and that'll be available today. But obviously repair and maintenance, the tenant's obligations around that. And it's pretty important because obviously you've got things like maintain all boundary and subdivisional fencing in a stock-proof condition. You know, it's really tailored there. We've got landlord's requirements, I think I've got farm management coming up here somewhere. So there needs to be a farm management plan if requested by the landlord. So there's a lot of good, strong stuff there that can be commercial. But again, if you're doing an SMSF and you've got a farm in that, you must use this agreement. It's an absolute must. So we've got that agreement there. So what I'll do is just stop recording for that one. So that's our suite of leases. With the residential one, I haven't put one up yet because it's pretty easy to get one. But what we'll do is we'll get a residential lease at some stage for each and every estate if required. Next thing, I'm still finalising that advanced healthcare directives and putting enduring guardianships up on as well.